Hello and welcome to lesson 7.4. Today we're going to look at break-even story problems and story problems with systems of linear equations. The first type of problems that we're going to look at are what we call break-even point. And the thing you need to remember about break-even point story problems is ultimately we're looking at when the cost is going to equal the revenue, or in other words, when the cost is going to equal the income for a business. So when we look at our first example, it says, suppose you invest $10,410 in equipment to manufacture a new board game. Each game costs $2.65 to manufacture, and it sells for $20. How many games must you make and sell before your business breaks even? So when we look at our cost, we see that we invested $10,410. So cost is going to equal $10,410, and it's going to cost us $2.65 for each game that is made. So I'm going to add $2.65. Now, I don't know how many games we're going to make, so I'm going to have to take that cost and multiply it by the number of games, or X in this case. Now that 10,410, that's a one-time investment. That's going to pay for all the equipment that it takes to make the board game, so that's why I don't have to multiply that by X. Once I pay for that equipment, it doesn't matter if I make one game or 1,000 games, that $10,410 is going to cover that equipment. So then I have to look at my revenue, or my income. So my revenue then is going to equal the amount of money that I'm bringing in. So if I'm selling my games for $20 a piece, that means my revenue is going to be $20 times the number of games that we sell. So because I'm looking for my break-even point, we know that break-even is when cost equals revenue. Therefore, I'm going to set my two equations equal to one another and solve for X. So I have 10,410 plus 2.65x equals 20x, and I'm going to go ahead and get all my x's on one side. So I'm going to subtract the 2.65 from both sides, and this gives me 10,410. These are going to cancel, equals $17.35 times x. And when I divide both sides by 1735 to get x by itself, I am now left with x is equal to 600. So this tells me that I have to sell 600 games in order to break even. For our next example, it says, suppose a model airplane club publishes a newsletter. Expenses are 90 cents for printing and mailing each copy, plus 600 total for research and writing. The price of the newsletter is $1.50 per copy. How many copies of the newsletter must the club sell to break even? Again, that break even tells me that we're looking at a cost equals a revenue. So I have to first identify our cost. And if we look at it, tells us that our expenses are 90 cents for printing, and that's per copy, so that's going to be 0.90x, plus we have $600 that we're going to add to our costs for the research and writing. Our revenue, or our income then, is going to come from the fact that the price of the newsletter is $1.50 per copy. So we're selling that newsletter for $1.50 times the number of copies that are sold. So we're just going to take our costs and set it equal to our revenue. So 0.90x plus 600 equals $1.50x. If we get all of our x's on one side, I'm going to subtract 0.90x from both sides, and I get 600 is equal to 0.60x, and if we divide both sides by 0.6, we end up with X equals 1,000. Now keep in mind that X is the total number of copies. So you do need to remember to put your label on these. So you have to sell 1,000 copies in order for your income or your revenue to equal the cost. Example 3 says several students decide to start a t-shirt company. After initial expenses of $280, they purchase each t-shirt wholesale for $3.99. They sell each shirt for $10.99. How many must they sell to break even? So break even, we have cost equals revenue. Cost, it tells us we have an initial expense of $280, plus each shirt is $3.99 per shirt. Our revenue then, or what they sell the shirt for, is equal to $10.99. So when I set my two equations equal to one another, we have 280 plus 399x equals 1099x. Subtract 399 from both sides, and we are left with 280 equals 7x. Divide both sides by 7, and we can see that x equals 40. And if you remember, x represented the number of shirts. So you have to make 40 shirts in order to break even. Example 4 says at SeaWorld you can buy a pop for $2.69. If you buy the souvenir cup for $7.99, which also includes a drink, you can get a refill for 99 cents each. How many pops would you have to buy to make it worth buying the souvenir cup? So this case here, this is kind of like a break even, okay? Because you're trying to figure out how many pops you have to purchase in order for both of them to be the same price, okay? Because if you purchase fewer pops, the $2.69 price is actually going to be a pretty good deal. However, there's going to be a point where if you start purchasing several pops, then the $7.99 plus 99 cents is going to be the better deal. So let's look at these real quick and figure out what our break-even point is. So if you're buying just the pop itself, our cost is going to be $2.69 each. And if we're looking at the souvenir cup, okay, so I'm going to write C for cup. So our cup then is going to be $7.99, which is a one-time fee, but you have to pay 99 cents each time you fill it up. So when our pop equals our souvenir cup, so we're going to set these two equations equal to one another. So 2.69x equals $7.99 plus 0.99x. I'm going to subtract 0.99x from both sides. And when we do that, we end up with 1.7x equals 7.99. So now I'm going to go ahead and divide both sides by 1.7. And I see that x equals 4.7. So I can't have 4.7 cups. But if I only purchase 4 cups, that's not going to be like a break-even point. So in other words, this tells me that once I purchase 5 cups of pop, that's going to be essentially the same price as if I were to purchase the souvenir cup and get 5 refills. Now for example 5, we're no longer going to be looking at break-even point. We're going to be looking at how to set up a system of linear equations given a story problem. So for example 5, it says, at an ice cream parlor, ice cream cones cost $1.10 and sundaes are $2.35. One day the receipts for a total of 172 cones and sundaes were $294.20. So what we have to do is we have to figure out how many cones were sold. So the thing that you have to figure out right away is you're going to have to identify what your X and Y are. So in this case, I see that I have a total number of cones and I have a dollar amount. So, I have a total number of cones and sundaes. So in my case, I'm going to say that X is going to equal the number of cones And I know this because I'm given the prices for cones and I'm given the prices for sundaes. So these are really the two things that we're comparing. So x equals the number of cones, y is going to equal the number of sundaes. Okay, so now I'm going to take my information that I'm given with my totals, okay, because 172 is a total and $294.20 is a total, and I'm going to write them in an equation. So for my 172 cones, if I take the number of cones and I add it to the number of sundaes, that gives me x plus y. This is going to give me the total number of cones that were sold, or my 172. Now the next thing we have is we have a total dollar amount. Well, to get a total dollar amount, you have to multiply the price times the number of cones and sundaes that were sold. So here we have 1.10 times x, which is the number of cones that were sold, plus 2.35y, which is the cost times the number of sundaes that were sold, and that should give us a total of 294.20. Now what you've got is you have two equations with two unknowns, and I would probably just use elimination to solve these. So to do this, I'm going to eliminate my x values, and I'm going to do that by multiplying this top row by a negative 1.10, and this will give me these two equations right here. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add them up, and I'm going to eliminate my x values, and 2.35 minus 1.1 is going to give me 1.25y equals 105. And if I divide both sides by 1.25, I can see then that y is going to equal 84. Now, if you remember, y is my sundaes. So this tells me that I have 84 sundaes. I need to know how many cones were sold. So I'm going to use this equation right here and solve that real quick. So I really have x plus 84, because that's my number of sundaes, equals 172. Or I can see that x equals 88 cones. And this answers the question that was being asked. So for example 2, it says you purchase 8 gallons of paint and 3 brushes for $152.50. The next day you purchase 6 gallons of paint and 2 brushes for $113. How much does each gallon of paint and each brush cost? So we are first going to identify what our x and y are going to represent. I myself am going to call x the paint, and y is going to be the brushes. So now if I look at my first day, it says I purchased 8 gallons of paint, so that's going to be 8x, and 3 brushes, so 3y, and that's going to give me a total of 152.50. Then the next day you purchase 6 gallons of paint, which is going to be 6x, and 2 brushes, and that's going to give us a total of 113. So now what we've got is we have two equations, two unknowns, and I'm going to solve using elimination. So I personally am going to choose to eliminate the y's, and to do that I'm going to get something that looks like this right here. So when I go ahead and I add these up, I end up with a negative 2x, my y's cancel, and I have a negative 339 plus 305, and that's going to give me a negative 34. So when I divide, I can see that x, which is my number of gallons, or my paint, is going to give me a price of $17 per gallon. And then in order to find my y, or the cost of each brush, I'm going to plug it into one of these two equations. Now, I personally am going to use the bottom equation, just because I think the numbers are a little bit smaller. So I'm going to have 6 times $17 plus 2y equals 113. And 6 times 7 is actually going to give me 102. So I have 102 plus 2y equals 113. If I subtract 102 from both sides, I end up with 2y equals 11. And if I divide both sides by 2, I can see then that y is going to equal $5.50. So $5.50 for my brushes. So the paint is $17 a gallon and the brushes are $5.50 each. For these next few, please take a quick second and try to do them on your own and then look at the solution. Example 7 says shopping at Savers Mart, Lisa buys her children 4 shirts and 3 pairs of pants for $85.50. She returns the next day and buys 3 shirts and 5 pairs of pants for $115. What is the price of each shirt and each pair of pants? So in this case, I'm going to identify my X as my shirts and my Y as the pair of pants, or the price for the pants. So then my first equation, as I'm told that she buys 4 shirts, so I have 4X and 3 pairs of pants, or 3Y, and that's going to give me a price of $85.50. Then for my second equation, she has 3 shirts, or 3X, plus 5Y equals 115. Now when I go to solve this, I am going to use elimination. And my x's are going to cancel. This is going to leave me with 11y equals 203.50. I divide both sides by 11 and I get $18.50 for each pair of pants. And then I'm going to plug that in. And again, I'll just use the bottom equation to solve for my number of shirts. So this gives me 3x minus 5 times 18.5 equals 115. Or I get 3x times 18.5, which is really 92.5 equals 115. And when I subtract 92.5 from both sides, I end up with 3x equals 22.5, or x equals $7.50 per shirt. Example 8, Grandma's Bakery sells single crust apple pies for $6.99 and double crust cherry pies for $10.99. The total number of pies sold on a busy Friday was 36. If the amount collected for all the pies was $331.64, how many of each type were sold? So we know that we're looking at the 2 different types of pies. So I'm going to say that X is going to equal the apple pies and Y is going to equal the cherry pies. So I have a total of 36 pies that were sold. So to come up with a total of 36, I have to go X, or my number of apple, plus Y, which is my number of cherry, equals 36. Then to find my total cost, I have to take the price of each one. So I have 6.99x plus 10.99y equals $331.64. Now, to solve this, I'm going to use elimination. So right here, you can see what I got for work. And now I'm going to go ahead and solve for y. And I can see that 20 cherry pies were sold. So then I'm going to go back into my top equation there, and I see that I have x plus y, which I know y now is 20, equals 36. This tells me then that x has to equal 16 apple pies were sold. And then the last example here is just a quick review. It says a rectangle's length is 2 more than 3 times its width. So I'm going to write that the length is equal to 2 more than means that we're going to be adding 3 times its width. So I'm just going to write this as 3w. And then I'm also told that I have a perimeter. Well, in this case, then I know that my width is just going to equal w. And I know that perimeter is equal to, hopefully you remember this. Remember, if I have a rectangle, this is my length, my width, my length, my width, and perimeter is actually adding up all the side lengths. So I have length plus width plus length plus width, which is equal to 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. So perimeter is 2 times length plus 2 times width. Okay, so I'm going to use what I found above to plug this in, and I know then that my perimeter is going to equal 2 times my length. Well, my length, if you recall, we said was equal to 2 plus 3w plus 2 times, and we know that our width is just w, and I'm told that my perimeter is 28, so I can go ahead and plug that in. So 28 then is going to equal, I'm going to distribute, so this gives me 4 plus 6w plus 2w. So now if I collect my like terms, I have 4 plus 8w. I want to get the 4 over to the other side, so I subtract 4 from both sides. And this is going to give me 24 equals 8w, or w then equals 3. So that's part of my problem. I do need to know what w is, but I also need to know what my length is because I need the dimensions. So my dimensions then are equal to my length. So if I plug my w in up here, I really have 2 plus 3 times my w, which we said was 3. So this gives me 2 plus 9, which is 11. So my dimensions usually go length by width. So this would tell me that my dimensions are 11 by 3. And that would be my final answer then. Please let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, I will talk to you later in class.